Hello and welcome. Today I will be talking about impatience and how you can navigate this trait, how you can navigate this tendency, and how you can soften this in you so that you are less impatient. And I'm sure you are impatient right now for me to dive right into, but if you don't know me yet, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Gosia and I'm a mind-body educator. I'm a holistic expert and a guide, and I work a lot with creatives, with highly sensitive people, especially women. So if this is something you identify yourself with, you're gonna have plenty of references for you to use. So let's dive right into, because I know you're impatient to hear about what I have to say. So let's get started with me saying that I had a lot of impatience in me. I have this tendency and I do have that streak in me, but I'm the perfect example to say that it can soften, it can decrease so much so that you actually become, let's say, excited about not knowing when things will play out. Yes, it's possible. So I want to start by laying some sort of foundation, how you can understand impatience, what that is. And when you understand it, it will be much easier for you to even catch yourself when you are impatient and kind of lean into this and soften the resistance to what is unraveling, to the pace, to the the entire concept of time, because this is related, how you perceive time, the scarcity of time. So let me talk a little bit about this, and later I will weave in some ways how you can tackle this in your own life. So to me, and quite obviously by working a lot with, let's say, the perception of what is causing us tension in our life, uncertainty in our life, like not knowing when things will play out, not knowing how they will turn out, being impatient and looking forward to a certain outcome, is something we are biased against as human beings. Like, we have a natural bias because we just want to know, and we want to know ideally very fast. And I try to stay away from saying this is a trauma response. Like some people out there, they will just take any kind of trait and they will say this is a trauma response. But I want to say that it is somewhat a trauma response, like probably 90% of all our reactions and behaviors are, because show me a human without a trauma and I will just be very happy to meet that person. But impatience comes from wanting to see the outcomes very fast, because there is inherent lack of trust in that person who displays that trait of impatience, right? What do I mean by this? Well, it is very related to not trusting the unfolding of how things play out, the pace they play out, and really looking to have this sort of immediate reaction coming from the action that maybe you perform. So let's say you are looking for a job, right? And you are sending out a lot of CVs, and you're just like so impatient to see people replying to you, inviting you to interviews, or if you have a business, you just want to have that client very fast. And when it doesn't happen, something happens inside of you that maybe you feel defeated, you feel like something is wrong, and maybe you are doubling down on your efforts, which, well, not always is a bad thing, but if you are already compensating by action, then you might exhaust yourself out of the lack of trust, out of the impatience. And it happens because Impatient people also have a very high level of reactivity. I already hinted how that's correlated. Reactivity is something that is kind of like a trigger release that, there is an action and immediate reaction to this. So if you are impatient, you are quite likely very reactive as well to different situations, such as someone says something and you're just like so reactive and ready to leap in to contradict that person, or you see a comment on your post or something like that, or on your blog, and you're just like, you immediately react to explain to that person how they're wrong and make sure that people understand you. And this is also related to being defensive a lot. So these things are important to kind of layer in to this topic, because you will be able to become more aware when these things happen, so that from this episode you're not just getting knowledge about your impatience within like looking forward to something playing out in the way you want, but you will also recognize that the defensiveness comes from this and that your reactivity comes from this. So I started hinting that is related to the lack of trust in the universe at large, which comes from what I mentioned very briefly, some kind of trauma response when we were disappointed by the environment we grew up with. So maybe you were crying when you were a tiny baby and no one came to like hold you, no one came to like cuddle you. So you were laying there in your tiny bed, you tiny person, and literally for a tiny person, they are completely dependent on the adults. And for them, basically the uncertainty of whether the adult will come and take care of them is a matter of life and death, right? I want you to really let that sink, because this is how biased we are against uncertainty. And for some people, obviously, that will be more depending on what kind of household they were brought up with, where they grew up, what kind of responses they received from their parents or caregivers. And this models basically how we can relate to tension of not knowing when things will turn out and how they will turn out. Because as an adult, obviously, you are much more capable. You obviously can take care of yourself. You can go and get a job. You can, soothe yourself emotionally. You can change things that are not, working well for you, that are not supportive for you, that are not nourishing you, and just exclude from your life the things that are working to your detriment, that are harmful, and maybe people that are toxic in your life. You have a lot of agency to alleviate these tensions, right? But the reactivity is the outcome from our really early childhood years, and it's something we can change. Like anxiety is also related to not allowing to see the things unfold in their own pace and in their own way. And I will also link a video here that I recorded, or you can look back if you're listening to the podcast, to one of the recent episodes when I talked about how anxiety is a habit, and in another topic I talked about anxiety as well. And this is really important for you to deepen your understanding on what does it mean not to allow things to unfold. And obviously, for the sake of this episode, I will explain you how that looks like. So things work out the way they do. There is a natural flow of life. And we as human beings, we've observed a lot of like action reactions kind of things. And we were taught from early childhood that if you do this, things will turn out this way. So we kind of correlate these things. And of course, there is causality of events. However, there is a lot of nuance to this, and a lot of things that we put out there, they don't have an immediate reaction coming from this. Sometimes you do have to plant a lot of seeds, so to speak, so that you kind of deposit some sort of energy into something so that it can flourish. And maybe if you have a business, or if you are an artist or something like that, it might be you are working for a long time to see any sort of results coming up. You are building up a momentum. And if you are an impatient person, that might mean that you have less capacity, both in your mind, both in your nervous system, and your entire, consciousness, to be able to contain the tension of not knowing. It's an actual stress that happens when you don't know. And so many people give up prematurely. So many people, look into things and they're just like, oh, probably what I'm doing is wrong. So they go and change something, or they start doubting themselves. And if that's you, well, I can relate to this perfectly, because like I say, I have that tendency in me, and it is very connected to, like I say, to early childhood. And everyone also is born with a certain constitution, or you can call it a character. And I think actually very few people talk about natural character that people actually do have. And there is a lot of things that we can change in ourselves, and a lot of things that we can leverage based on what is natural to us. So, talking about allowing things to unfold, I started by saying life and the universe has its own way of cyclical changes and picking up the momentum that we pour into some avenue. Maybe, let's say, you are on your healing journey of some sort, and you're just like putting in some actions, putting in, let's say, some sort of modalities or some techniques to help you heal. Maybe that's meditation or that's journaling, and you're just like, oh, that's not working for me. You just tried it for a month or two, and there is also a lot of second guessing that feeds your mind with more questions, like, what if I'm doing the wrong thing, right? What if in my business I'm doing the wrong thing? What if, whatever I'm putting energy in is not going to return in the way I want to? So you can see how there is a lot of trying to control and force things to fruition in the way you do and on the timeline that you would want it to happen. But I keep getting back to the unfolding of life, where we do need to cooperate with whatever energies we're working with. And some of the energies are, for example, like people around us. They also have their own wants and needs. And, you wanting a certain thing from that person, you can't control the other person, right? So you have to control with putting in some sort of work, putting in some sort of energy, and being flexible in changing your attitude to kind of flow around these obstacles while being loyal to your values, while being loyal to whatever you chose as your way to help you. So, for example, let's go back to being an artist, and if you're trying to build a business, you decided maybe that you want to do it independently. You don't want to include galleries. You want to be your own boss, right? And at certain point of trying put yourself out there and things like that, you might be like, oh my god, maybe I made a wrong choice, maybe I should have tried to reach out to galleries and some people that will work for my exposure, right, and not just rely on myself. And what happens here in this example is that you might start spreading yourself thin and stop doubting the very fact that for some reason you wanted to be an independent artist, you wanted to sell from your own workshop, right? You didn't want to include galleries, but that seed of doubt started, just making you compromise on whatever values you had, whatever needs or dreams you had in the beginning. And this is how impatience can play out. This is just another example. But if you allow yourself to trust the unfolding of life, that might mean still within the idea of, like, I want to be the independent artist, try different ways, see if you can be more creative about how to display your work, or be maybe bolder, or just try different things, not necessarily start out the entire path and the entire way of doing this altogether. And there are so many more examples I could give you, but I hope you're getting now that we are working with life, we are working with the universe also wanting to teach us about some things. For example, if you are working towards, like I say, having a business, then maybe you need to understand certain things about yourself as a leader. And for this reason, before you get an outcome of leading a group of people, like let's say as a coach or some sort of healer, then it might be that the universe has a plan for you to teach you about leadership, how to lead yourself, and all these kind of things. And I've had so many examples, so many detours, as I call them, coming from the wisdom of life that wanted to teach me certain things, not to rush into the outcomes that I wanted to see. And in hindsight only, I was able to see how important these detours have been, and how without them I would not be able to actually carry the weight of the responsibility of the outcome, because every outcome carries also an inherent responsibility to take care of it. Because if, let's say, you had your business work out from one day to another, are you sure you can provide a service at a high level to accommodate these clients? Are you sure you have your, let's say, payment organization set up? Are you sure you have already registered your business? All these kind of things. They are quite practical examples of what I'm trying to explain. But impatience is, also questioning our trust, is questioning our commitment. Are we actually committed to this goal so much that we will allow for all these detours to happen, that we will allow for the obstacles to, make us stumble and make us see so many different perspectives, that we just wanted a straight line to get somewhere, right? And obviously we have a goal and we want to go right there. We want to manifest this immediately. And, I also talked about why manifestations take so long a few months ago. But basically what happens, we are working with material energy. And if you have an idea and passion, there has to be a lot of this on consistent basis, so that it builds up a momentum of some sort. It's almost like a test of your commitment and an energy that streams continuously towards a certain dream or a goal that you may have. Because if every wish was coming true as impatiently, as, reactively as you're impatient to, then all kinds of weird things, including your worries, including your worst case scenarios, will be happening as well in such a speed. And this is not something we want. That's why we have to commit to something. And, there are a few factors that can speed an outcome. There are some things like a high level of belief, like literally making up your mind that you're doing this in such a way that is really fueled by some intentions, that is fueled by your values and your higher goals and perspectives on how you want to live your life on your terms. So if you really fuel some goal with a lot of that, with how you want to live your life, and choose a goal that is really passionate, that is really something passionate, then you have a much higher chance of seeing results happen quite sooner. If we're talking about impatience as in you want something from this person or you want them to change, then I want you to really put a little bit of perspective on this, because like I said, we can't control people like they can't control us. Everyone has their own sovereignty, and I hope you are working on your self-worth, that you are working on your inner power so that people cannot easily influence you. And this is a good thing, that you cannot influence others so easily. And if you wanted to, they might quickly become resentful, or they might do some sort of passive-aggressive stint against you, because deep inside of them, they just don't want to comply to whatever you wanted from them. And there are different things at play. So impatience is this kind of tendency to want things immediately, want them your way, without acknowledging the multitude, the actual infinity of other things happening around you that you can't see, that are beyond what you can see right in front of you, the cause and effect. Which doesn't mean things are not layering and compounding for you to receive the results of what you're working towards. Patience is really, really such a high virtue to have. And being able to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, not having what you want to have immediately, and allow for the universe to show you the way. Sometimes it might be slightly different than what your mind had projected, because I speak about this all the time. Our minds, our brains are almost completely conditioned, and we want to create the future based on our past, what we have an idea how things should play out based on a judgment, because we simply haven't seen different ways of things coming to realization. And there are so many different ways they might happen for you that are not as you outlined them in your mind. And I want you to really take this episode in the way that you digest it slowly. I know it's a challenge, but anxiety really comes from not allowing the life to unfold in the way it does. And the only way to balance it out and allow for that impatience to release is to start honoring the life, to start honoring the pace, start honoring and welcoming different situations that happen in our life that might show a slightly different way on how you can get there more efficiently where you want to. Maybe allowing some people to be presented on your way that would help you get there, and allowing things to just really play out in the way they do. Go with the flow. And I really believe like it completely changed my life to be going with the flow, to trust the unfolding of life. And to trust the unfolding of life, first of all, you must trust yourself. So this is a really important aspect. Trusting yourself is at the core of trusting the world. Because if you can trust yourself, you know you can respond to whatever is being presented to you at the high consciousness level, or at the level that is self-loving. That is level that you haven't yet outlined and just really rigidly decided that this is how it has to come out. Like this is how it will play out. When you trust yourself, you trust that, okay, tomorrow this person will not get back to me on the email. But, you know, the business that I'm working on might present to me kind of a different avenue of solving this maybe marketing challenge that you have. And when you play with this, you welcome this, and you can start thinking at this situation, oh, okay, there is another way to tackle this challenge. And if you can respond to this, when you're flexible enough, when you see this as an opportunity, you can seize it and you can play with it. It's another thing that you haven't predicted, but we cannot predict life. Uncertainty and impatience and all that stuff comes from wanting to control life. This is the main cause of anxiety. Like I say all the time, that when you try to control life, you will be really disappointed and you will be suffering with a lot of, you know, mental and health issues that come from that inner stress of trying to control something that is inherently uncontrollable. Like trying to control people, trying to control, you know, the outcomes and things like that. And again, this is not to say you cannot have your dreams coming through and the outcomes you want to see. But you need some sort of level of flexibility on how you're getting there, and trusting yourself enough to respond to these twists and turns and shifts, and to know that you can take care of yourself, that you work towards your best good, that you work by using your highest consciousness all of the time, which means being trusting, using the sort of abundance mindset, and doing all kinds of things that open you up more for receiving things that you didn't plan necessarily. And like I always say, it's all about the choices you are making. So when you want to align to your highest self choices, you really need to know the difference in what kind of choices are they. And for this reason, I encourage you to download the Higher Choice Guide, the Fear versus Trust Guide, that you can download for free from the description of this episode. And I always encourage you to do this. I still use the same premise in my own life, and this is what helped me grow my consciousness. This is what helped me grow my capacity to welcome the unknown, to welcome the shifts, the changes, and really, really huge changes in my life. To know that usually life presents these situations for a reason. And this is what allows us to not feel like a victim, to feel like that we are co-creating with the world, to tap into that inner power and have fun playing with these twists and turns. It's like, I don't know, an improv or something like that. If you're into theater, you just have to play with what is being shown to you and have fun doing this. This is basically the entire, you know, idea of life. But you can still win this. You can still make it fun. You can still enjoy the journey, right? So I hope this episode has been helpful. I hope you have some more clarity about how to navigate your own impatience. And I really encourage that you get back to reactivity, anxiety, and defensiveness episode from a few episodes back, and I will help you dive deeper into understanding this as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you very soon.